us on Facebook at Daunta Along. Follow us on Instagram at Daunta Long. Follow us on YouTube at Daunta Along. Thank you for tuning in to Long Talk.
Good evening, good evening, good evening, and thank you so very much on tonight for tuning in to Long Talk. I am so grateful and so thankful for all of you that are tuned in on this evening's discussion. We appreciate you taking the time to come on and log in and be a part of tonight's dialogue. As always, what a privilege it is to have this opportunity to be with you and to talk to you because of the relevant issues that we have that we need to discuss and we have the opportunity to discuss. And so we're so thankful for this opportunity. I appreciate you and your time to come in and be a part of our dialogue. I also want to say, as always, please take the necessary time to go and visit us on our various social media platforms at Daunta Long. So if you will, go to Facebook for those that are watching on Facebook, or go to Instagram or to Twitter or even to YouTube. And for those that are watching us tonight on YouTube, thank you so much. Please hit that subscription button and also hit that notification bell. And I appreciate you doing that for us on this evening. Tonight I'm so happy we have a great conversation for us on this evening, and so without any further ado, I want to take this time to ask you to go ahead and do that for us on this evening. Okay? All right. Thank you so very much again for tuning in on this evening. All right, so listen, tonight's conversation is going to be a great conversation, and it's going to enable us to just have a meaningful dialogue. And tonight, please, without any further ado, I want to invite you to our guest, and our guest tonight is going to render for us some meaningful dialogue, as tonight we're talking about deprogramming in the middle of this crisis. Deprogramming in the middle of this crisis. So tonight, please, without any further ado, would you help me welcome my guest, a very dear friend, a very good brother. Tonight, our special guest is Pastor Jim Haskell. God bless you, Pastor Jim Haskell. How are you this evening?
I'm good, Daunta.
So happy to have you to take the time to be on with us tonight. How's everything going for you?
It's had a good day. I tried to dodge the virus whenever I could, so I'm doing good.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Oh, man, it's what a joy it is to have you sharing with us on this evening. Jim, do me a quick favor for many that do not know exactly who you are. Would you take just a few minutes to notify our audience exactly who is Pastor Jim Haskell?
Well, first of all, he's a graduate of the great Georgia Institute of Technology, engineering degree. Spent so much time on my knees in thermodynamics that I ended up going into ministry. And husband of Linda, dad for Trey and Carrie, father-in-law for Tyler, grandfather for Miller and for Beckett. So that's the major things. I have pastored for 45 years. Started out in youth ministry. Went to seminary in Texas. Spent most of my years in Texas. The last 16 in Austin, Texas, pastoring. Came back to Atlanta to work in the city and in planting new churches in urban areas and being a part of that movement in Atlanta. And for 6 years, I served with the North American Mission Board with the City of Atlanta city missionary, assisting young men that wanted to plant churches here in the area. And then for the last 3 years, in retirement, I've been pastor of Bridgepoint Church at Toco Hills, which is in the Decatur area near Claremont and North Druid Hills Road, where they intersect. And it was a church there that had been very faithful and very strong for a number of years, but had declined quite a bit, and were right on the verge of having to close. And they wanted to see if they could find a way to breathe again and to live again. So we've started a replanting, rebooting process with them. Been doing that now for 2.5 years. Was the interim for them before that. So it's been right about 3 years that we've been on this track. So uh, that's kind of a nutshell who I am and what I've done.
Well, so happy that you have not given up on ministry, as you had a long tenure of doing ministry, and
Yeah, in
man, you're
fact,
still.
I'm having more fun right now than I've ever had in my life, Dante. At age 69, it's more fun than I've ever had in ministry.
Wow, wow, wow. And just to see you continuing, it's really just a joy and yet a burden, because I know that as you continue to grow in age and in the number of years of doing ministry, many would like to just, fade off into the sunset, enjoy those retirement years, and just sort of take a breather. But you have said no. If there is a call of need, then what I wish to do is to step in, and not just step in, but take a full footing, which you've done there at the church in Toco Hills. And just how's that been going ever since you've assumed the lead pastorate there?
Well, it's great. I started out as the interim pastor. They were in the process of talking about merging with another church, and they were a few months away from that. So when the pastor that was there, who was a friend of mine, left and moved to Florida to take another church, they asked me to come in. It's going to be a couple months. I was going to be with them. I was still working full time at North American Mission Board. And when they got to the vote, the other church that they were merged with voted not to merge. So they were just kind of sitting there saying, well, what are we going to do? We thought we were merging. They'd been working on a plan to merge for almost a year, and everything was kind of heading in that way. And all of a sudden, it was no longer there. And so, I had been doing consulting with churches in the area, kind of on the side, in my own time, helping them, especially ones that were needed to revitalize or to replant. And so I told them I've looked around, I've done some analysis, and basically, I think you have two options. One option is you can continue to do what you're doing right now, and you probably got about a year and a half to 2 years of life left. You'll be selling your property more than likely, or you can give it a shot and try to see if you can um, make the church sing again, make the church breathe again, live again. And but it's going to take some radical changes. We can't keep doing what we've been doing. And I said, quite honestly, you might be out of business in a year doing that, but you'd at least have your guns would be blazing at least, instead of just staying in your holster. So they said, well, let's give it a shot. Let's see what we can do. So we put together a plan with one of their with a team that they're in the church, and came up with in a lot of ways, a radical plan of how to restart the church as a totally different entity, different governance, different organization, different style, culture, the whole deal. And so, it was interesting. Like all things, everybody was there, wanted change. But the first thing I did is that I grew them from about 100 to 75. And that's probably not the way you want to grow. You probably want to grow positive, but um, some people basically they wanted change, but they didn't want the change that we were changing. So they left. So we kind of hit that bottom level of 65 to 75 people, and then started to see some traction take place. And the church was primarily an older congregation, older adults in that area that had been in the church for a long time, and had really sacrificed a lot for the church. And then we started to reach some young 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds, and started to have children coming. And we've got people in our church getting ready to have children. And so this is something that was not taking place in the church. So with an older congregation, we lose quite a few every year that go to be with the Lord. So you have to really, reach a lot of people to really show, a positive growth. But it's been good from that low point of 65, 70, 75 people. We average now 130, 140 in attendance, and the age group of the congregation is a lot younger now than it used to be. And so we try to offer a kind of ministry that's a multi generational ministry, that older people still have their thing and what they're used to, and
Yes.
younger people have theirs. And so it's a fairly diverse approach to doing things, but it's going well. It's exciting. We're learning some things about this that can be transferable, I think, to other situations and other churches one day, and we hope to be able to share those things one day.
Well, I'm glad that you have not only got into making sure that the health of the church had been revitalized, but now you're actually seeing growth. And in the midst of all of the growth, um, we seemingly have now hit a crisis of sorts with COVID-19 initially. How did your congregation react to the COVID situation?
Well, we shut all the gathering down probably 3 months ago or so. It was I think right about the third Sunday in March, I believe, somewhere in there. And so we've been doing things virtually since then. We're getting ready to start some gathering experiences. Unless this spike continues that we're seeing now, then we'll have to readjust. But they seem to have adjusted, pretty well to that. Um, we had today, I was notified of the very first church member that we had that got diagnosed with COVID. He was diagnosed today with COVID. And up to
Mm.
this point, we had not had a church participant. Now, we'd had some relatives of church participants, but we had not had a church participant that was diagnosed with COVID. But today, I found my first one. So um, that's a new move for us. We had not dealt with that before, so we'll be seeing how that develops.
Wow. And our prayers are with the family of that individual
Thank you.
that was just diagnosed. And again, our prayers are with your church, and making sure that everyone at Bridgepoint um, will continue to be able to look forward to the day in which you guys are able to come back for community worship there at the location there in the Toco Hills.
Thank you.
So, Jim, there was COVID 19, and then amidst COVID 19, as you were trying to deal with that, then all of a sudden we start seeing a reinsurgence of, quite candidly, police brutality against unarmed black men in our country. And initially, when this happened, let me ask you, how in the world did this have an effect on you personally and the Bridgepoint Church?
It was. I think when I watched that video from Minneapolis, it, along with the tears, there was just an absolute gasp that I saw.
Mm,
I just to think of people that are paid to protect and to make sure the law is obeyed, but yet to make a community better, and to see that policeman's knee on that neck for 8 minutes and what was it, 26 seconds, or so. it was unbelievable for me. I just never have thought that it would ever be something so dramatic and so ridiculous and so despicable as that. Um, and yet I know that that's not the first time something like that's happened. I know that in my head. I've got friends that have told me of things they've had to endure in their life and things they've had to handle differently than what I had to handle. And so I know that it's out there. I know that things probably even worse than that have happened, and I know it has. I know even in the 1900s in Georgia there were lynchings and things like that in the early part of the century, and but you tend to live your life and you kind of you know you get over, quote unquote, what you've seen over a period of time, and then you settle back into the way you're going. And even though a person is not someone who sees himself as being a racist or being prejudicial against people, he works really hard at making sure that that he's on the right side of these issues. Yet if it's not sitting there in videotape, it's just easy to ignore, even though you're not ignoring it. You get on with your life, you get on with all the things, and it just passes by again. And probably would have this time if the video had not been there. And I just wonder how many cases like this happened, before 20 years ago or so, when people could video things on their phones, and it was just, washed under the bridge, swept under the bed, and just, and only the people that were victims were the ones that knew anything about it. So, I mean, there was a lot of guilt I felt in that process, watching that video. You know, yeah, I just felt dirty.
You said you felt dirty.
I felt dirty.
Let's talk about that for a second, if you don't mind. Why did you feel dirty?
I'm white. I'm white in America, and I don't know that I totally even sense what a black person in America has to go through, and that just made me feel so bad. I mean, it's we talked a little bit, Daunta, and probably some of I'm going to unpack a few things that probably caused those feelings. Okay,
Yeah.
and let's talk a little bit about the deprogramming process that I've been under in my life. I told you I'm 69 years old. I was born in a small town across the Savannah River from Savannah on the South Carolina side, and great place to grow up. Great people. I still love them. They taught me so much. They gave me so much of understanding of life, and that I could be something in my life, and all of that. My dad was a Baptist preacher. I grew up in a preacher's home. Didn't always like that, to be honest with you, but my dad and mom always loved me, and so it's not a thing where I can throw stones at my growing up experience, but they're just even good people that I saw to be that I would thought to be good people. They were part of a culture that shaped me in my early years. I didn't know I was being shaped, and I don't think anybody sets out to be a racist. Maybe some people do, but most people don't decide one at some point in life that I'm going to be a racist. I'm going to be presidential. Uh, I'm going to be someone who looks at another person as being less than me. I don't think we make that decision, but
Is that
somehow
almost
by
similar to like nobody in the second grade, when asked by the teacher, what do you want to grow up to be, they yell out an armed bank robber or
right.
a mass murderer?
I don't know of anybody that I grew up with, and some people are still there, and they haven't been on the pilgrimage I've been on. They still kind of part of the culture. I don't think there was a time in their life that they made a decision to think the way they thought, or to
Okay.
think the way they think today. Uh, it just was part of the culture you grow up in, and you don't really realize where you are and you're younger, and so you don't really go through those real um, personal inspections that you do. And basically, it was my first year in college when I really started to understand things differently. I told you that I was there in South Carolina when integration took place. I was in the eighth grade when Robert and Gloria and Reginald came to be in our class, and I know that I didn't, and I don't think anybody else did anything against them, but we didn't do anything for them.
Mm-hmm.
They were just kind of hanging out there. I mean, we didn't go out of, we didn't, at least I didn't, and I don't know if anybody went out of their way to harm them or to threaten them or anything like that. But we sure didn't go out of our way to make friends with them, to count them as valuable people, the people that had, the mark of God on them, just like we did. People that the only difference between us and them was that the pigment of our skin. I mean, we didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I, but then as we grew up through the years, I played ball with Reginald, and he became a friend, and we stayed in touch until he died at a young age, and so it changed. But I never went to his house. His grandmother raised him. I know that, and raised him in an area that people of color grew up in. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and I never went over there. I never, I never invited him to my house. The culture just didn't have that, and so I think part of what I've been on for the last, um, you know, 50 years of my life is a deprogramming process
Wow.
of honestly realizing that even though I love those people that brought me up, and I love my mom and dad, and my mom and dad made stands. I still remember the day that the church my dad pastored voted whether to allow black people to attend or not. Now, can you imagine that a church actually votes whether to allow somebody to attend or not? And you hear all these things. People think they're saying the right thing, and they're not. They're saying, well, if they want a church, we can go build them one over there where they live, and all that kind of stuff. And I still, to this day, remember those discussions and understand that. But I also remember when the vote came in that it was something in the vicinity of 121 to 2, not to allow black people to attend our church. And the two people that voted to allow was my mom and dad. So I mean,
Wow.
they, but yet even they had some prejudice in their lives. But I mean, when it came to that, they were on the right side of that. Dad stayed at that church for 15 more years. I asked him one day, how could you stay there with all of that? He said, well, Jim, they're not going to change if I leave them. I need to stay to help change them. And by the time he retired, we had numerous people of different ethnic backgrounds and different colored skin that that were coming. Not only African Americans in our city, but also our little town, but Hispanics and people from Southeast Asia. I mean, we had a lot of different people, but the church had never rethought that vote they had taken back in the well, that's probably back in the late '60s. And as my dad retired, one of the things they did is they went back and revoked that. They took that off of their minutes and negated it, deleted it, and voted, officially to do that which they were already doing. So I'm saying that to say that I had people in my life that when it came to these big issues, they understood what was right and wrong, but yet there were still parts of their lives that were still part of the culture they grew up in, and how they were raised, and and how do you separate people that you love, people that you respect, and then you come to a point of understanding they were really wrong on that. That was bad. They shouldn't have done that, and that's part of that deprogramming situation that a lot of white people my age have either decided to stay the way they were, or they've decided to try to be a better person when it comes to race relations and those kinds of things. And so it started really my first year in college at Georgia Tech. I started to see things differently. It went through years in ministry. It went through years in scripture. studying, understanding, knowing, God's heart on all this, and
Hmm.
realizing that my culture of growing up didn't match what God was teaching in Scripture, and so over a period of time, I've had the opportunity to mentor young African American pastors. I've had the opportunity to pour my life into them. I've had opportunities to help them with churches. I've had opportunities to form relationships. I live in Midtown Atlanta, and we have a number of people of different backgrounds that live all around us, and to build friendships and all of that. And on the big issues, I've always been on the right side of those as I've started this deprogramming process. But I think the thing that the last 3 weeks have done to me is that as a pastor, and like I said, 45 years in ministry at this point, as a pastor, I've always tried to do everything I could to not cause dissension in the church. So
Wow.
if we had issues in the church, I would try to work through relationships, help people understand things, try to keep issues from entering the church that would cause a split in the church or division in the church. And I think the thing that really got me was that seeing what took place in Minneapolis, I realized that that's not the first time I've seen something like that. You start going back to all the different issues. I mean, go all the way back to Rodney King, in Los Angeles, and then come forward to, the Trayvon Martin and all the others that you've seen come through. And the thing that made me feel guilty and feel dirty is that I felt aghast at all of those too, but I could forget about it. I could move on. It didn't make a difference at a point of how I led and what I said and what I did at a point of leadership. I mean,
Mm.
personally, you know, I was on the right side of it, but as a leader in the church, I was not speaking as I should. So, my the deprogramming over the last 3 years, or the last 3 weeks, excuse me, has been more specific in the area of, do I choose to try to help avoid dissension as a leader in the church, or do I choose to speak truth to crisis? And
Wow.
I've
Wow,
and I
Jim,
and I
Jim, great point. Great point. I gotta take a moment. We
yeah,
gotta pay a bill real quick, and I
you
want to
go.
come back and deal with that on the other side of the break.
Sure, go.
Wonderful, wonderful.
You're sitting at the light again, late for work, with 101 different things going through your mind. Things like texting your coworker or listening to the morning drive time. When suddenly you're startled from a loud sustained hug from the rear, you're embarrassed. The light has turned green, and it's time for you to go. Introducing the road trip. Life is a trip, so read the signs. By Dr. Joel Trout. Stop, yield, go. Construction zone ahead. It's amazing that we have less accidents when the signs in of themselves have no power to enforce. Yet they inform, guide, direct, and warn us of the potential dangers ahead. This ebook encourages you to apply a deeper meaning to the spiritual context of these ambiguous signs, so we can safely navigate through this thing called life and arrive at our destination in one piece. The Road Trip. Life's a trip, so read the signs. By Dr. Joel Trout. Order your copy today. 2020 Grad Day is not over for our graduates due to COVID-19. Show your school spirit by providing your students, faculty, and staff with memories that will last a lifetime. Introducing the Allmercials Virtual Graduation Package for your graduating class of 2020. Customize this moment of a lifetime presentation to suit your graduating class and school faculty needs. It's simple. Just email us your school website, graduating students, and staff names and photos. Yearbooks, senior photos, cap and gown, student ID, picture day can all be used to create a polished presentation that everyone will love for years to come. This is an absolute unforgettable gift. Nothing can say more than congratulations, class of 2020, you did it. The Allmercials Virtual Graduation Presentation, available now at allmercials.com or give us a call at 770-276-8626 or 678-629-0675.
Well, we're back tonight here on Long Talk with our special guest, Jim Haskell, who is the senior leader of the Bridgepoint Church in the Toco Hills, east part of Atlanta there. And tonight he's been helping us in this topic and this idea around deprogramming in the middle of this crisis. And right before the break, Jim, you made a point about would we rather avoid, here it is how you said it, you said would we rather avoid dissension in the church, or is that more important than speaking truth to power? What exactly did you mean by that?
Well, I think that in the white church, and we're a diverse church, but we're predominantly white. Okay, in the white church, there are so many people at different levels of understanding things, um, that when you start talking about controversial issues, it tends to cause dissension. And so, what I had done through the years was just try to handle people one on one, talk to them personally, help them change their opinion if they would, but at least explain to them why things were happening and why they didn't need to, you know, react in certain ways. But I'd never really been someone who spoke um, about. I'm very much non-political when it comes to preaching. So
Mm-hmm.
I had never spoken to anything that could even um, hinge on anything political. But this to me isn't political. It's a human value. Um, it's a disgusting power display against someone who was helpless and did not deserve what happened to him. And you know, it's being made political. I mean, let's face it. These days, you know who's watching Fox News, and you know who's watching CNN, and you know whether they're going to vote for Trump or not vote for Trump, basically because where they take sides on all this kind of stuff, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that's ridiculous. This should not be a political thing. It should be a right and wrong, a fair, unfair, a just versus an unjust situation. And and so when you speak though in that kind of a thing, you got people from all kinds of backgrounds, and you're going to cause some dissension. So you sort of decide to try to handle it differently. But this time, Darren Hughes is on staff with me, and Patrick Baez is on staff with me, and we've tried to take some very noticeable steps, not to um, come across like, you know, this is another situation that we just let go.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had some very frank conversations with our church via the virtual contact I have with them. I've written some things to our church, and then Patrick and Darren have recorded, you know, some stuff on video to send out. We're going to have a town hall discussion on this with people the first week in July in our church. We're going to talk about this and talk about how we need to understand things, not just from our point of view, but understand what other people have walked through and see it out of their eyes,
Mm-hmm.
and realize that when they are hurt by things like this, when they're hurt by a Confederate flag or a Confederate statue, and their brothers, and it hurts them, that we ought to be people that love them enough where we're willing to change because of how it hurts them. And we're going to have those discussions. We have come up with a statement that we put out on social media from our church. So what we've done is saying we're not just going to let this go again. Now, what I'm hoping to do, statements are cheap, discussions are cheap. And
Mm-hmm.
as you know, last night we were talking, and there needs to be some concrete things we can do that can make not just a political state or a public relations statement that we're inclusive and we're diverse and we care about you, but actually go to the point of making a difference. And so we're looking forward to finding out how that can work out in our church and start taking some of those concrete steps in the future, because we have enough neighborhoods around us that because we're in an area that goes from basically Buford Highway through Interstate 85 all the way over to Clarkston, and there's enough neighborhoods, Scottdale and that area, that we need to be a part of, and we need to be seen, and we are in some areas, but nothing like we need to be, like so I mean that's what I was talking about. But the deprogramming process, though, Dante, is it's not just for um, the those of us that grew up in the white culture to understand those that grew up in the black culture, but it's also for those in the black culture to understand what we also grew up in, and to understand that sometimes what is seen as little steps on our part are actually pretty revolutionary steps sometimes, and that we didn't choose to be who we are. It just kind of got put on us, and I think both of us, both groups, both cultures need to be able to talk to each other and kind of understand what it was we were both raised up in. Now, we didn't have to deal with the stuff that the black communities had to deal with. Didn't have to deal with the oppression. We didn't have to deal with the bad education opportunities. We didn't have to deal with as much poverty. We didn't have to deal with the housing opportunities. We didn't have to deal with some of the family systems that you deal with, and those things or some of the families have, and as much. So we're not from the same place, but we both do have cultures that have kind of shaped us, that we both need to understand each other a little better. And I think we get better. I know I have gotten better as I've gotten to know people from other cultures.
Yeah, and I will say this: a lot of my critics, Jim, have been saying to me for the last few weeks, "Man, you need to give it to them a little more. You need to help many of your Caucasian pastor friends know the hurt and the pain." And one of the things I've said to them is, I don't think we're going to just shove it down the throats of our white brothers and sisters. I am so much interested, if you will, in spoon feeding. Somebody said, "Well, come on, Long, you're not handling this right, because do you know how bad the problem is?" And it is not. But I just cannot believe that one or two or three or four or five or six conversations are going to uproot what Mom, as you said, you made a very powerful point. I don't think it's going to uproot the environment that many have been a part of all of their lives. And so just to be able to have the dialogue, but as you said a moment ago, looking to put in practical steps. And you're saying you want to have a town hall, you want to reach out to your community and have more conversation. Past the conversations, what else do you think you're going to be implementing to your community?
That was in our discussion last night, I was asking John. I said, "John, tell me what it is that we can do that can really make a difference." I do know from a personal standpoint, I'm trying to be sort of a mentor with some kids and some things like that. We certainly want to do that. I think that we can do something to help the education systems be better than they are. If we can impact an elementary school, which we're trying to do, an international school, if we can impact it positively, it affects the children that are there and those things. But I'm hoping to learn. I'm really hoping to learn what we can do. I think sometimes we want to do something, but what is it that we can do? There's some things that churches can influence their parishioners, but we can't change the political systems except through, voting and things like that. We don't have control over some of those things. So what are some things we can do, at that point? And let's realize it. We have a decision at some point. Maybe we didn't decide when we were younger in our culture, but there comes a point that all of us have a decision. We have to decide whether we're going to stay in that culture or whether we're going to leave that culture.
Sure.
Or whether we're going to be you're
I think
complicit
one
to
of the
that
things
culture,
too that
whether
we're
we're going to
looking
be getting,
for,
yeah.
particularly here in Atlanta, is we're seeing examples of continued voter suppression. If many of our Caucasian churches can provide means, perhaps availing your facilities for additional polling areas that may be situated in
And that's
African
always
American communities.
that's always open for us to do that. I mean, at this point, they seem to have enough in our area in DeKalb County, but we're certainly open to do that. We want to do that, if that's needed, but we've never been approached, for that, Um, so, yeah.
Yeah, everything from voter suppression. I know that there are things that have been done with many churches with helping. We heard in a conversation last night about advocating for young black males that are currently being incarcerated for non-violent crimes. That the only reason why they're still sitting in there is because of this unequitable bond system that says if you don't have cash liquidity, then you will sit here until you rot, if you will, excuse the expression. But we need more attention brought around that. We've saw some success stories in the city of Atlanta, but in other municipalities, we've not seen this issue addressed. Helping many that have not ever owned homes, when we can help them understand the value of home ownership and getting out of debt and just doing many of the things that we have taken advantage of over the years and been benefactors of, but
Right.
many of our brothers and sisters have not had the education. And I'm a firm believer that it all starts in the education of the matter.
We did have an opportunity. Our church is in a great place with these DeKalb County parks and rec, and we do the Easter egg hunt. We do the fall festival for a park that's run by the DeKalb County, and they actually, in their adult education, ask us to teach a class on what's that, the crayon, how to use your money, effectively and everything. And we actually teach that class for people that wanted to sit down and figure out how do you get to the place you can do some of those things. Those are things we need to do more of.
Yeah. And one of the things that I have been very vocal about it, and I don't want many people out of their guilt. As you said earlier, you felt dirty, and there are many that have this sense of this level of responsibility, and most just want to throw some money at this situation. But one of the things I've said, that just throwing money at a situation will not make it better.
No.
And so at this point, I'm wanting people to really utilize the resources that will far outweigh cash liquidity. The old saying is, give a man a fish sandwich, he eats for a day. Teach a man how to fish, he eats for a lifetime, right? And so if you can provide education, I've often said if there was more mentoring between those that have arrived and have achieved to those that see no path, the exposure element many times is that key indicator that can just trigger an interest, trigger a new path, and find a young person who saw no path now can find a path because of mentorship. And Jim, you talked about mentoring earlier. Let me ask you this. When it is that we are seeing that we have influence, former U.S. Ambassador Andrew Young, former mayor of Atlanta, said it like this. He said that our influence is like a savings account. The more that we use it, the more it is of benefit. The less we use it, the more it becomes obsolete. Your influence in that area, where do you think you personally would be most beneficial in that Toco Hills area to the entire community?
Being there, a little over 2 years in the new church, and just trying to get that up and going. I've tried to find where that is. I've done some. I've been trying to get to know the business community in the area. I've been trying to get to know some schools, some of the needs like that. Trying to get to know some of the neighborhood organizations, those areas. I'm searching for that. To be honest with you, I think that there's an identification process and then there's an accessibility process. Once you identify where it is that you need to invest your life, then you need to find how you can get access and being able to do that. And so that's sort of the pilgrimage I'm on right now. I've always been able to do that in other places that I've pastored. I've always found those channels, those connections to be able to pour my life into either systems or people. And I'm still looking for that. And so I'm asking questions, trying to identify and trying to find that place. For a long time, I was on the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee for the Beltline in Atlanta. And so I found an opportunity to serve in that area, being able to speak for people that were being thrown out of their communities because they couldn't afford the taxes anymore because as the values went up, and finding solutions to that. But when I came over to DeKalb County to pastor's church, I stepped out of that responsibility. That was more of a Fulton County, City of Atlanta deal. And so I'm still looking for that place. But you said something earlier, Daunta, though, that it's okay to get angry and mad and shout at us. Sometimes that's the only way, yelling at us the only way we're going to hear. So it's okay to do that. We need to be yelled at sometimes. And if we have a relationship and we love each other, we need to be yelled at. Yell at us. But because sometimes we don't know how much, we don't know the hurt. We don't know the frustration. We kind of come on this in the last 20, 30 years, whereas, you've had family members going back generations that have stories they've had to tell about things they've had to deal with. It's not just a 20, 30 year thing for you guys. It's generational that y'all had to deal with over and over and over again. And sometimes we don't know. We don't understand that if you don't yell at us. And I'm not one of these that think that you got to have a peaceful protest, because I don't think peaceful protests ever change anything. I know that when, the Boston Tea Party was, back in the original one back in Boston was certainly not a peaceful protest, and the American Revolution was not a peaceful protest. And when things need to change, peaceful protest, it doesn't bother me. I'm not critical of people that go to another level than just a peaceful protest, because I don't know that anybody pays any attention until that happens. I think just a march down the street with nothing else causes very little attention.
Sure.
Sometimes we need to hear how hard it is and how bad it is, and we don't pay attention until we realize this is something huge,
I've often quoted one of the famous quotes that rioting is the voice of the unheard. And most times we say that individuals that are out displaying a level of tension are the ones that have they're just to cause destruction. What I've seen more times than not is individuals that have yelled, screamed, individuals that have wrote letters, individuals that have been in public meetings and said their piece and been given a deaf ear and a blind eye towards. And so many of these individuals have been on the front lines and demanding and getting right in the face of officials and talking and screaming and yelling that you haven't heard me before, but you're going to hear me now.
Right. Yeah,
and I understand it. And so that,
and I do understand. We don't want people to kill someone, in that process. We don't want. And let's face it, when you destroy a property, so many times, it's the people who own the property you're destroying are the people that can least afford for you to destroy their property.
yeah,
They're in places that people are struggling to make it go, and some of them are African American owners and their first business venture and things like that. And so, certainly, we don't want to see someone killed. We don't want to see a whole person's life go up in smoke in front of them. But I also know it's got to be more than just walking down a road with a sign. You know, Even in the peaceful protests of the civil rights movement, they still went across that bridge. You know,
yeah,
they still marched across that bridge. Now, they might not have done anything, but they did something that they knew what it was going to cause, and that's what brought attention, and that's the reason there are movies made about walking across the bridge.
yeah. Bloody Sunday there in
Yeah.
Selma. Uh,
Yep.
that really struck the nerve of the American culture to
Right.
see the
But it had to be
injustices of that
something
day
that
were
that was
exposed
bigger
on
than.
national television
Right.
and gained the
And if
attention.
they had not opposed them and driven them back, and if they had just gone across the bridge and nothing had happened, I doubt very seriously we would be thinking much about it. But it's because they stood up in the midst of that and what happened to them, and then they went back again, and the whole deal. So therefore, I think there are times that we need to have people yell. Is what I'm telling you.
Wow, wow. Jim, I've got about 5 minutes left. I got to ask you this one. This has been burning on me. Has deprogramming been expensive? If
It has its
so,
cost.
are you at liberty to share what it has cost you?
It is costly. Um, you have people that leave your church because you are taking a stand on something that you shouldn't. I can remember the first time I did a wedding of a mixed race couple. I had people leave over that. That was years ago. So whenever you take stands, it. But I've always seen that as got to get rid of people who are going to keep us from being who we need to be anyhow. So he always replaces them with much better people at that point. So, but it is costly. It's costly when the people that you love and look up to, who coached you in sports, who taught you Sunday school class, don't get what you're doing. You know, you grow up wanting them to be proud of you, and they don't get it, and that hurts, and their relationships, their friends that you lose through a process because they've kind of lined up in a political stance in one way, and what you're saying doesn't sound like what they're standing for, and it's not,
Yeah.
So, but I think you gain much more. We love living in the city because we love the diversity of the city. I wouldn't live in an all-white suburb if you paid me to go. You could give me a house and I would not go there because I don't want to live in that kind of lifestyle. And I think because of the changes in our life that we've gone through, we've come to value where we are, more, and it's a better life for us. So, yeah, it costs, but it also pays in good ways. Like I think I told you last night that my daughter, son-in-law, and two grandchildren live right off the Cascade in a neighborhood that they're the only white family there. They love it. They love the family structure of the African American families there. Some of them have lived on that street for 30 and 40 and 50 years, and they come down and check on. It's just my son-in-law is a pilot. He's gone some, and they'll come down and check on my daughter and children and make sure they're okay. They have just with open arms, brought them into the families up and down the street. My daughter wouldn't think about living anywhere else, But until we made some of the decisions we made, till we made some of the changes we made, till we started seeing things differently, I'm not sure that we would be living the legacy that can create that even for our children.
Jim, I really applaud not only you but your family for really taking the, as I often quote Robert Frost, the road less traveled. Because when you take this road, I know it's not a very popular. I know that you're not speaking and using the catchphrases that really appeal to the masses. I'm sure that you have had many doors closed, but yet, as you said, many doors opened, which is a testament to the goodness of God, how He allows those doors that need to be closed. He closes them for you. And so I'm just very happy. Jim, I am so thankful that you took the time to come on and chat with us tonight and just to talk about this deprogramming. And I appreciate all that you have done, the benefit that you have played in hundreds of pastors across this country. And even in this city, you were just a very instrumental voice to me personally during the inception of when we were planting our church many years ago, and how God has reconnected us. I am very, very thankful for your voice of wisdom for this time.
Thank you, Daunta. Thanks for inviting me tonight.
Absolutely.
Sorry,
God bless you.
Sorry I talked the whole time.
You're all right. We expect the fathers to share wisdom, and when the fathers share wisdom, we fall back. I learned that as a young man. When the fathers are speaking, fall back and listen, because you'll catch the nuggets that you'll need moving forward. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay.
God bless. Well, friends, I pray that you've enjoyed this dialogue here tonight, and I trust that this long talk tonight has allowed you to understand the cost aspect of deprogramming. I have been one that has always looked to the deprogramming of any culture during times of prosperity, but yet times of crisis, as a necessary implementation that is deemed significant. And how much more now in this time of crisis are we going through a deprogramming of how we have viewed and how we have handled and how we have mishandled, if you will, African Americans and black people here in this country. And I'm thankful that tonight we were privileged to have a father who has been doing this for nearly rather over a half of a century, and he has continued to be a voice of reason. We don't get that very often. Many of you that have watched this show, you've said to me, and you've said off record, that boy, where are the fathers? We appreciate all of the energy that many of the young people bring to the table, but where are the fathers? And tonight we were so privileged to have a father, and we're so thankful. I want to say this to many of you that are watching tonight and will watch this in the days to come. Our long talks are designed to have the uncomfortable conversation, to raise up the issues that many do not wish to deal with, or many wish to just sort of brush aside. And tonight, as we've been talking about deprogramming, all of us have a responsibility. Here it is. Our responsibility in this time is to make sure that we, hear this, whether you're black, whether you're white, whether you're Hispanic, Asian, or whatever your ethnicity is, that you take the time to understand the mindset of the environment in which a person comes from. Because when you can do that, you can understand why they are so passionate, or why they are so lethargic and antithetical, and perhaps even somewhat just could care less. apathetical. But tonight, understanding the environment is essential, and it helps all of us get to the place where we can now deal with the opposition, deal with those that don't see it the same way. It helps us understand, well, the reason why you don't is because of the way you have always seen it. Now let me help you see it a new way. In our long talk tonight, here's your takeaway. When it is that you even find difficulties with those that you engage in on a daily basis, whether they are of the same ethnicity, whether they are of the same gender, the same sexual orientation, or whatever difference, you understand their story. You take the time not to just pass your agenda off, whether you feel it's right or it's necessary and must be heard, but you give that person the opportunity to share their environment. And that will be the gateway to helping you understand where to go in and to be able to build and create a new path or a new understanding or a new ideology. And this will lead us to more healthy relationships. All right? Well, again, I thank you so much for watching. Again, if you will, take a moment before we log off tonight and follow us, those that are watching here on YouTube, those that are watching here on YouTube. Thank you so much. Those that follow us, please, please, please tell your friends about Long Talk and have them follow us on whatever social media platform that they are on. All right? We wish to stay connected. Friends, enjoy the balance of the week. This weekend, enjoy the weekend. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. Enjoy that family. Get out and do something. Make sure you keep that mask on, but make sure that you enjoy this weekend. I look forward to being back with you on this coming Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. God bless you. Until next Tuesday, you've been a part of Long Talk.
Follow us on Facebook at Daunta Along. Follow us on Instagram at Daunta Long. Follow us on YouTube at Daunta Along. Thank you for tuning in to Long Talk.